Amen. I hope you have your Bibles with you. If you do, turn to Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26. Your gospel, you can't miss it. It's the first one. I mean, it's possible you can miss it, but Matthew 26. If you open up with that. One of the distinguishing feature of Christianity from any other world religion or philosophy, of course, is Jesus. But something that's very distinct about Christianity from other religion is the belief that Jesus' death did something for other people. It's very important to understand. Jesus' death did something. He wasn't just a dude. He wasn't just a guy. His death did something. When Confucius, or Confucius, the Latin spelling, he died, didn't do anything for anybody. When Muhammad died, he just died and they buried him and his bones were there. That's it. When Moses and Abraham died, didn't do anything for anybody. When I die for someone one day, it's going to be hopefully sad for someone, maybe happy for others, but it's not going to do anything sad for my daughter. Thank you, Julia. Or was that happy? I don't know. Was that when you raised your hand? High five on the sad one. Okay, so it's going to be sad, but it's not going to do anything. No one's going to be set free. No one's going to believe. Well, they might get some money if they have life insurance, but that's it. That's it. That's it. And hopefully I'll leave a legacy and character in other people. But it's not going to do anything for a mass amount of people at all. Not at all. As a pastor, funerals are usually fresh in my mind. I just came from one. I got another one coming up soon. And I always think about that. And so we can leave legacies, which is important. Oh, my goodness. But Christians are convinced from the very, very, very beginning that Jesus' death did something for other people. He wasn't just a good guy setting a good example. And they apparently taught that in the early church because Jesus himself taught it. He taught it. And in Matthew chapter 26, we see an example of how he tried to explain what his death meant. There are times he talked about it and he preached about it. There are times he just showed it. If you have Matthew chapter 26, you go to verse 17. And before we do that, I'm actually going to tell you a little bit. One of my children's favorite pastimes, basically, is to ask us for a story. Last week was my 1-year anniversary of being at this church, and some people got a lot of sweet cards, mostly very, very sweet cards, and got a couple little gift cards, I love those. And one of them was a gift card to one of God's favorite restaurants, Texas Roadhouse. And so I took my wife and my daughter and a daddy spouse date, you might call it. She's a high five. That's right. And so we went there and had a great time and it reminded me of being back home in Texas. Country music was playing. I ate meat. I spit on the floor. It was a good day. We don't really spit on the floor. I'm just a joke. Okay. Anyway, she looked pretty serious and grossed out. So we ate this steak. It was good to be at Texas Roadhouse, and we were sitting there. My daughter said, "Daddy, tell me a story." She does it all the time, or my son will say it. "Daddy, tell me a story. Tell me a story. Tell me the one about the bike." One time I had this BMX. I ramped and I cleared the ramp and I slanted. It's a pretty cool story. Tell me that. So I start at the very beginning. Well, it all started back when this happened. Now tell me the story about this. And Mama, tell me the story about that time you almost died. She did. Elaine got viral encephalitis, and she should be either a vegetable or dead. It kills almost every kid or leaves them in a vegetative state. 3 days later, she rose up, no illness, when she was a baby. So she tells these stories over and over. She said, "Well, Daddy, tell me a story." Well, we do. We relive it. Now, my kids haven't been there, but I relive it. This one time I had a bike wreck, and I lost all my memory. I have no memory of that day. I woke up in the hospital with a concussion, and so I relive these stories, and they're excited every time they hear the story. Well, Jews did that for centuries. They relive stories. They say, "Daddy, tell me a story." And one of the favorite stories they told over and over, "Tell me about that time that our ancestors were slaves and God rescued." "I like that one. Tell me that one again." "Okay, well, this is what happened. There's a man named Moshe, or Moses, which in Egyptian means drawn out of the water. What happened was God raised up this Moses on, and he sent him to Pharaoh, and he told Pharaoh, what? "Let my people go." Do you know the song? And he didn't do it. And all the boys and Jewish boys and girls going, "Wow." And so God had to spank them 10 times. And he sent he called them plagues. And he said, time after time, they got worse and worse. And he said, "No, I'm not letting my people go." And finally, the very last one, something horrible happened. What? Well, God the Father said, Yahweh our Father said, "If you don't let my people go, I'm going to have to take the Egyptians' first sons," which would be the eldest son. That means the military would have been decimated. "I'm going to have to take them. I'll have to kill them. I'm going to send the death angel. But here's what I'm going to do to protect you, Israelites. If you'll get the blood of the lamb and smear it over your door, that death angel is going to pass right over it. You'll be set free. Well, that's what happens. They do get set free. They get Passover, and they live what we call the Exodus, which in Greek means, exodos means the way out, the path out. And they celebrate this festival every year, all the time. They call it Pesach or Seder. They still call it that. In fact, that was the earliest name for Easter, by the way, because it happened near the Pesach. And so every year, Daddy, tell me the story. And they would relive what it means to be a people of God who's rescued out of slavery, bondage to the Pharaoh. And they relive it every year in this special meal. They'd get together and break up the food. And that's what's going on in verse 17. It's a very exciting story to be retold over and over. And Jesus and the disciples are no different. Look in verse 17. On the first day of unleavened bread, that's a festival that came right after Passover. And so these festivals tended to get joined together. The disciples came to Jesus saying, where will you have us prepare for you to eat Pesach or Passover, the Seder meal? He said, go into the city to a certain one and say to him, the teacher says, time's up. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he sat at table with the 12 disciples, and as they were eating, he said, one of you here, I'm telling you the truth, is going to betray me. So in this special religious holiday event, he's eating bread and chomping down on vegetables, and they dip it in salt water for the bitterness and the tears they cry. Everything is symbolic. 3 or 4 different kinds of bread, 3 or 4 different kinds of cups with wine in it, and all of a sudden Jesus drops this bomb. Oh, by the way, one of you here is going to betray me. And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him one after another, is it I, Lord? Like, He says, the one who's dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. He doesn't mean a person in particular. He means there's someone who's right at this table. In other words, he didn't have one person. He's not giving out who it is just yet. He's saying it's someone so close, they're at this table. Verse 24, the Son of Man, that's Jesus, goes that it was written of him. That is, I do what Scripture has predicted, you might say. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It'd been better off had he not made it in the first place. Had he never been born. Now, what's going on? I show a couple of pictures in communion each week here at First Christian. So here's one example of a picture we show often. I picked this one on purpose because it's a good example of what it was in the ancient world. You know, they don't have silverware because they use their hands all the time. Romans could use them, but typically in this time period, and Palestinians typically use their hands for almost everything. The plates and bowls are pretty accurate. See the little oil lamps there? There'll be lamps going on. You can go and still find those in Israel, buy replicas. They're sitting up. Most Jews sat up at every meal. At normal meals, they sat up. The problem with this picture with communion is they're not leaning. By this time period, Jews leaned typically on their left side and ate with their right hand. And they just were influenced by the Greeks and Romans who did that. So this is a good picture of them eating. It's not probably the most historically accurate for communion or Passover because they would have been leaning versus sitting up. It looks a little more like this one, a little more like that one. They're leaning there, but they're not really leaning too much on the left side. And you see the disciples and maybe Judas here on the side going, is that I? I'm not the one going to do it. So right in the midst of this great, wonderful celebration of God rescued our people, one of you is going to betray me. And it was a massive insult, a massive breach of trust to have one of your dear friends and a table guest to betray you. It still is a massive breach of trust. But the ancient world, this is a biggie. And no wonder the disciples go, well, I'm not, is it I? Am I the one doing it? Imagine looking around the room. I mean, think about it. It's probably going to be Thomas. No, I don't. It's probably Pete. He's always. It can't be Judas. Judas is the one who holds the money bag of the group. That means he's the most trusted. He's got the wallet. It can't be him. Let's see. It's probably Andrew. One time I saw him. He stole some fish. They weren't look. I saw it. He going around the room. Someone right here in this midst. Judas says, I'm not the one going to do it. Do you ever tell God one thing while you're really planning something else? Yeah, he knows that. You ever do that before? Look what Judas says in verse 25. Is it I, Master or Rabbi? In Matthew's gospel, typically people who are not very close to him call him master or rabbi, my master. If you're close to Jesus, typically in Matthew, you call him Lord. So this term shows he's a little distant. And what does Jesus say in response? Well, you've said so. He's talking to the person he knows is about to go betray him. And what does Judas do? He goes off and tells the religious authorities where Jesus is hiding, and they give him 30 pieces of silver. That's the price of a slave. Judas's mind is already made up, and he's still talking to Jesus one-on-one. You ever talk to those people that gossip about you behind your back, and you see in face, hey, how's it going? But you know what they said behind your back? That happens in church often. I mean, many times I met people like, I know everything that happened behind the scenes. Hey, how's it going, David? And they walk out. You just know when you're shaking your head, there's something, come on now. Am I the only one here? Oh, that's fine. Jesus is doing that with big Judas now, the one who would have probably been the most trusted. Master, I wouldn't do that. You ever pray to God like that sometime? God, if you'll just give me that job, then I'll make sure I give it to you. I'll give you all that money, all that glory. But you've really made your mind, no, I'm not. I'm going clubbing. I got a purse I want to buy. I got shoes on my mind. If you'll give me that man or that woman, that relationship, if you'll get me out of the relationship, then I'll do X, Y, Z. We kind of barter sometimes with God. Well, Jesus knows that too. It's just safe for us as disciples. Just tell them the truth. I'll be honest, God. If you give me that, I'd probably use it for my glory. I'll be honest with you. So maybe you don't want to give it to me. I don't know. But if it's so, you're not alone. Jesus goes on from there. Look in verse 26. Then look what happens. He's taken this meal around, this bread. He says, as they were eating, he took the bread and he blessed it, and he broke it and gave it to his disciples. Now what's going on there is he probably lifted up the bread. They still do this. They lift up the bread, and to bless it means to give thanks for it. They would have said a prayer over it in Hebrew. And that blessing comes later on when the Greeks said it. They would say efcharisto, means I give thanks. That's the word Eucharist. It means to give a thanksgiving over. And that's what sometimes communion is called Eucharist, particularly if you're in Roman Catholicism. Eucharist, communion, Last Supper. They take the bread, he blessed it, and he breaks it. That's what everybody did in the ancient world for the Exodus event. But now he says, take and eat this. This is my body. What in the world is he talking about? What is the significance of the bread? He's talking about matzah bread. It's unleavened bread. It's the reason why in the second service, well, it's one of the reasons, we usually use this flat bread. It's going to happen later on. This matzah bread is unleavened. Well, who cares what kind of bread it is? It matters a lot to the story. Because you and I probably didn't grow up reliving the Exodus account all the time. It's not fresh on our minds. It was fresh on their minds. Daddy, tell me a story. They heard it all the time. Before they were freed from Egypt, God prepares them and says, you're going to make some bread, but you're going to be in a hurry. So don't spend a lot of fancy time, because when God sets you free, you're going to be going fast. This is what he says in Exodus 12. This is how you're to eat it. Dressed to travel. Sandals on your feet. And your staff in your hand. Like, get the gas in the car. You're to eat it in haste. It's the Lord's Passover. So they baked cakes of bread without yeast, using the dough they had brought from Egypt, for it was made without yeast, because they were thrust out of Egypt and were not able to delay. They could not prepare food for themselves either. When Pharaoh said, fine, get out, boo, they were out. And when they celebrated that event after it happened, they had commandments of how to relive it and how to celebrate that event. This is what they said as they celebrated it. Next chapter. Bread made without yeast must be eaten for 7 days. No bread made with yeast shall be seen among you, and you must have no yeast among you within your borders. You were to tell your son on that day, the one you're teaching why we do this. It's because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. If you don't know this, yeast helps it get bigger, right? So when there's no yeast, it stays flat. So when you celebrate, and you celebrate this matzah bread, you're going to celebrate this. Daddy, why do we do that? Because when you eat that bread, you're reminding them that we were once slaves, and God freed us. I've been to fancy Seder meals, and people invited, and that's sweet. It's nice, like fundraisers and stuff, and I've gone. I don't never prefer to go that much, only because in the Gospels, Jesus is not simply reliving the way it was. He's having a meal that celebrates a wonderful victory of God to set his people free, to form a new people group, but now he's redefining it. So when Jesus picks up this bread, in essence, what Jesus is saying, when you eat this bread, watch out. Know what you're getting into. When you take this bread and put it in your mouth, you're part of a new exodus. You're going to be one people free from the bondage of sin, initiated in my death. Know what you're getting into. When you break this bread and eat it, but right before he said it, they had a very different understanding of what they were about to eat. No, Jesus. When I eat this bread, it demonstrates that I'm a Jew and God rescued us. That's wonderful. And he says, this is my body broken for you. What? Now they know that it's not literally his body. Jesus didn't break off a pinky. He knows it represents his body. If you partake of the bread now, you're not just partaking in being a Jew. You're part of my people now. You're joining with me together. One people, you're not free from Pharaoh. You're going to be free from sin. But it comes at a cost. When you participate with this bread, know what you're getting into. You're joining with me together. Then he goes on there. Look what he says in verse 27. He took a cup. When he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Now, this is going to sound a little weird to us because this doesn't happen much at First Christian. In the ancient world, when they sacrificed animals all the time, the belief was that the life of the animal was in the blood. Kind of like you might say the DNA is in our blood. They thought the life-giving force of a person or an animal was in the blood. So it was sacred. You didn't want to come in contact with the blood, except when it was at the sacrifice time. That blood represented things. So after Exodus, and they were freed from slavery, and then Moses says, let's have the law, and he's given the law of how to learn things. There's a festival about the law, and listen to what it says here. This is Moses, he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls for peace offerings to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood that come from those animals, and he put it in bowls. And half of the blood he splashed on the altar. That's a way of purifying the altar. It might have looked and smelt funny, but it purified ritually the altar. He took the book of the covenant, we call the law, and he read it aloud to the people. And they said, we're willing to do and obey all the Lord has spoken. Woohoo! We'll sign the contract. So Moses took the blood and he splashed it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. So now there's blood on the altar from those animals offered. Now there's blood on the people. They're all in this together. One bloody mess. Sorry, that's a pun. Being sprinkled with the blood of the animals means that people are now united to what was offered to God. And have blood on them means they're committed to obeying God. It's like signing a contract. It's like when my pastor back then got married and gave me the rings and said, you need to understand, when you take this ring, it's not a flippant thing. When you take this ring, you're committing to obeying everything Elaine ever tells you. She's your boss. That's what I heard. I don't know what he said, but I'm just kidding. She's not even here. I'm not even getting any points for this. Not even here. But there's a sign. It means something. If you take this, it means you're submitting to something. Of course, what I really did submit to was the vows I made. I submitted to the vows I made. Jesus takes the cup and he passes it around, a cup that looked very much like this cup. This is from the first century. Jesus is in essence saying, when you drink this, you're binding yourself to me in my death, which gives you forgiveness. We don't pour wine on us or splatter blood or wine on us. Maybe that would be a different kind of church. He didn't do that either, but they got it. They got it. Before you start sipping on this cup, you need to understand what you're doing. You're not drinking this like we were a few seconds ago, celebrating what happened a long time ago. When you drink it right now, you're binding yourself to me in my death. Now, it gives you forgiveness, but there's death involved. Are you sure you want to drink this? Don't pass it around too quickly, Pete, Andrew, Judas. Don't sip too fast. He goes on at verse 30. In verse 30 it says they sang their hymns. And that's what they did in Passover meals. They sang their hymns afterwards in several psalms. They went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, you will all, how many? All fall away. See, Peter gives a bad rap. All of them are going to fall away because of me this night. It's written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. So you're going to betray me, but I'm still going to be your Lord in the future. That's good news. Verse 33, Peter said to him, though they all fell away, they're all a bunch of sinners, I will never fall away. Ain't going to happen. Jesus says, I tell you the truth, Pete, this very night before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. Before the sun rises over the edge over there, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And he said, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And so said all the disciples, Even those for whom Jesus dies can betray him. And even those who betray him can be restored. I don't know about you, I'm telling you, but that is good news for me. How many times have I told him, Lord, I'm not, wherever you go, I will follow until it's inconvenient, or I'm made fun of, or I get persecuted. Lord, I give you everything except all my money and my time and resources. Sometimes we just, in different ways here and there, have the confidence of Pete and the betrayal of Judas. And I'm so glad. It says it in the gospel too. I love it in Mark's gospel. After Peter denies him, Jesus tells the disciples, I'm going to Galilee, and tell Peter I'm going. We worship a Jesus who knows us so well and restores us even so. And some people I meet all the time in pastoral ministries, just the overwhelming guilt of what they've done, and they cannot fully believe that Jesus Christ knows everything you've done, and they still yet can restore you. He can still restore. He's still doing it. Well, partaking the last meal, it's no light matter. If we have the time and we don't, we go into 1 Corinthians 11, where Paul is celebrating communion with the early church at Corinth. And what's happening is the poor people who are working all day, they come off the fields and off the job, like me, and they come into the communion table. Well, the rich people are already eating all the food because they get to sit around. They were not allowed to say retired. They're not all retired. They're wealthy enough they don't have to work. And so here they come at this communion table of the Lord, and there's crumbs left. And so every time they have communion, it's a reminder of the haves and have-nots. It's a class division. Every time they get together in Corinth, he said, stop doing that. Stop doing that. When you come to the table, you got to realize why you're doing it. And we got to be ready to offend people. In John chapter 6, in his version, when Jesus says, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you can't be my disciple. In John 6:66, it says, and many people left him. They said, this saying's too hard. This is ridiculous. It sounds like we're cannibals. One of the number one charges from the pagans, the early non-Christians, to Christians in the first few centuries was that they're cannibals, because they heard through the groom reveal that they're eating flesh and drinking blood. It was. And they also called them incestuous, because they called each other brother and sister and gave each other a holy kiss. What's offensive today, sister and brother, stay with me, I'm almost done. I'm telling you, we have to admit this and claim it and own it. And from you, some in this room, it still might be offensive. And that is, we need someone to die on our behalf. We've got to be ready to be offensive. When I go out on Mass Street or 6th Avenue, whatever it is, I'm at the gym, and I'm talking to guys there, and I am. They're different people. I'm trying to make disciples. I'm slowly but surely building a relationship with them. And the time, David, tell me what you're about. Now, let me tell you a story. Now, what do you do at your church? And we start talking, well, this one meal we have is called communion or Last Supper. I don't care what you call it. Why do you do that? Well, it's because Jesus died for me. What makes you think that? You see how the story goes? Because I can't go along into the story without me having to say, because you're a sinner and you need that. You need it. We have to. We're sunk. We're sick, and we need a healer. It's still offensive. It offends our sensibilities. It offends our pride. Who do you think you are? I'm not a bad person. And we've got to be ready to be offensive. Nevertheless, the offer still stands. It still stands, even here at First Christian. Would you come and share in this body and blood? Would you participate in the new people of God, freed from the bondage of sin, committing yourself to live as people forgiven by his death? Or would you make other plans like Judas? You and I are given the option every week here. No one's compelling you. God doesn't compel us. We always have the freedom to say no. But sister and brother in Christ, I'm with you on the same level, same ground. Every time we go to eat that bread and blood, realize, do I know what I'm getting into? As much as I do, am I ready to join myself with him in his death? I get a huge payoff. I get forgiven. But I realize that I might have to go to the cross too. I'll never forget the first time I ever served communion. Ever. I'll never forget it. I'd never been on that side of the table. I'd always been on this side of the table. The first time I ever worked at a Methodist church, I was on the left side of the church, and I was handing out the bread. They came and kneeled down at the altar, and you gave them bread, and you said, and I remember as I started to do it, and this story's not about me, but I remember as soon as I started to do it, I said, this is the body of Christ broken for, and I choked up. And I started to cry. I can't even talk. And this overwhelming sense of unworthiness hit me hard. I mean, it hit me hard. And I looked at all the people on the nail, and I thought, I'm not going to make it to the end. I don't make it to the first one. Who am I to serve this bread? I have no idea what it's like to look at people who betray me in the room and say, you're going to betray me, and I'm going to die for you. I have no idea what it's like to die on the cross for anyone else. I have no idea what it's like to sacrifice all that. I have no idea. And I still feel that. I'm so thankful that he still did it. And you might feel that way too when you come to take the bread and the juice. Well, sister and brother, the water's just fine. None of us are worthy. All of us at some point betray.